Welcome to the Rathgar Horticultural Show. This is the 66th annual show, and it was well established and a much enjoyed event in the life of the village, drawing people from far and wide. In this unusual year the format has changed, but the enthusiasm and sense of fun has remained undimmed. Exhibitors sent photographs of their plants and shrubs and vegetables and so on, and they have been placed in sections. You will be guided by three experts: Bruce Carswell, Hilary Knox and Fraser, all of whom are known to you, and they will give you a running commentary on what you see. Now, to follow this, you need to use your imaginations. You enter the lecture hall, which is known to many of you, and imagine that you join a group of 6 or 7 people, and you can be socially distanced and you can even wear a mask if you so wish. We hope you all enjoy the show, and we begin now with the roses, guided by Bruce.
Well, this is a selection of hybrid teas, and you'll see them as we go along. That's one called Pristine, that's one called Ginger Rogers, and you can see the typical hybrid tea thing. That's actually a fun rose, one that I grow just because I like the colour. It's called Nostalgia. That's an example of one. It's an exhibition rose, but it's very niggardly. It'll maybe give me 3 blooms on a bush in a year, which is not really something for the garden, but I grow it for exhibition. That's one of the modern roses. Now that's another fun rose. It's called Rock and Roll, not an exhibition rose, but just a bit of fun. It has a nice scent, by the way. I think a rose without a scent is like ham without mustard. That's a very nice tequila sunrise. Now that's an example, if you could just keep that going, that's an example of a centre that's wrong. If they don't, the first thing the judge looks at is it got the typical whorl of it. Now that's not a very good rose. It certainly would be failed if it was on the exhibition bench. Another one of Rock and Roll. Some good examples of what I call good garden roses. That was one actually misled me. It's called Buxom Beauty, and it's huge, and I thought that's going to impress the pants off the judge. No, because it's got one petal underneath which keeps falling, and it's not actually a very good exhibition rose. Whereas that last one was, because it's Silver Jubilee, and everyone should grow it, because not only is it a wonderful garden rose with a nice scent, but it also exhibits very well. Now this is one of the Holy Grail. It's a blue rose, a proper blue rose, which they spent years trying to develop. Nice examples of hybrid tea roses. You see that the high centre and the whorl in the middle, and that's slightly flawed. Look at the way in the outside of it was flawed. The judge would take marks off for that, because one of the things he looks at is not size but perfection. So he's looking at all the petals to make sure they're not marked. That's a nice garden rose. That colour, I bet, is a nice perfume too. Now look at the centre of that. See the way it's whorly? That's what he looks for in a hybrid tea. That's another example of Silver Jubilee. A wonderful garden rose. Every garden should have one. Now again, that's an example of a very good hybrid tea. Look at the high crown, but the petal is flawed, and he would take marks off for that. But that's a typical hybrid tea form. That's a nice example of a hybrid tea. Look at the centre, see how it's nice and whorly. Now this is an interesting one. It's a hybrid musk called ballerina. It goes under the shrub and other categories. And that was given to me by Kathleen Ennis, who one day turned up on my doorstep and said, "I've cut mine in half, I'm giving you this half." Now she has also shown one here, and you'll see it in a minute, and I've always been very grateful to her for it. It's a most unusual rose. Again, a silver jubilee. Again, you can see the whorl in the middle of that. That's just Joey. And he goes over very quickly, but you get him at the right time, and a lot of it's timing. If you're lucky. Now Floribunda, the difference between a hybrid tea and a Floribunda is quite simple. They redefined it in the Royal National Rose Society. Hybrid tea that started as large flowering roses, and Floribundas they called cluster flowering roses. Now that's a good example of a cluster flower. And again, what the judge is looking for is lots and lots of blooms on the one stem. And there are two good examples of Floribunda. That's Anne Harkness. Now that's a very good example. That's the Holy Grail, a blue rose, a shrub rose, a Floribunda rose rather. And they only developed it recently, a proper blue rose, not half blue like Blue Moon. There's another example of it. You can see it's a sort of cornflower blue, and it's actually very attractive in the garden. Does not exhibit well. You grow it for fun or for display. That's a good example of a Floribunda. The thing about shrub roses is it's the form. It's not classic exhibition form, but it gives you lots and lots of blooms, and it looks very well in the garden. Look at these examples, lots of colour and hopefully scent as well. I must say I plant scented roses close to the back door so that you get the scent in an evening. In the summer's evening. Some of these shrubs are actually as tall as I am. Roses over the door, very nice. No scent, I can tell you. It's morning jewel, north facing. There's a good example. That's a lovely shrub. And that looks like my lot. Thanks very much. Enjoyed that.
Well, I would ask the question of when would you prune roses?
Well, I have 120 rose trees in my garden, so it's so I begin immediately after Christmas. I wait to see what the weather's like. If it's a mild January, I'll start in straight away. If it's a cold January, I'll wait till February. And I don't do them all at once. I work round them because I work out from the sunroom out towards the back of the garden. And if I have 3 Alinas, I'll do them separately, so they'll come out at different times, because a lot of it's just luck. You have a superb bloom, but it's on the 5th of July, that's no good because our show is on the 4th of July. Or you have a superb bloom and it rains on the 3rd of July. You know, so I prune quite hard on the hybrid teas, relatively easily on the Floribundas. And I know people in the winter, they'll start in about October, November, and they'll take them down by a third, everything by a third. I used to be able to do that when I was younger. Don't find it so easy, but I'll certainly do it with the bankers. I have bankers that I know will perform well in an exhibition. I mentioned Silver Jubilee, Alina, Tickle Pink, and I give them special attention, and I feed them specially too.
And do you prune all your roses at the same time, your climbers and your Floribunda and your bush roses?
I'll do climbers and shrubs later.
In January?
I'll do that. I'll probably be March by the time I get to them.
And when do you feed?
I start feeding in March. I get some, pardon me, horse manure, which is extremely good for them, and I put it round the bowl of the stem of the rose, and then maybe a month later I'll apply some granular feed, and I'll water it in.
Okay.
And do you feed through the whole season?
Yes, I do foliar feeding. Now you can get that.
Can you recommend the best foliar feed?
I'm just trying to remember the names. It's in a yellow sort of container, and it's not made up. You get these ones where you have your feed made up and you're just buying water.
Yes.
I buy the concentrate, and you put a capful into a watering can, and you actually feed it over the rose, and it goes onto the leaves, and the leaves absorb the feed.
And would you
I
have
would
a
do that
preference?
maybe once a fortnight maybe.
And you wouldn't think about, some people recommend that the seaweed foliar feed has been very good. Have you ever used that?
No, I haven't, and good for them if it works for them.
Yes.
And sometimes you can buy the concentrate, and I think the seaweed in it, but that's a different one. You put that round bowl on top of the granular feed and the manure, and it strengthens up the roots.
And do you deadhead regularly?
Yes, all the time.
A lot of work, Bruce.
Well, it is, but it's a labour of love. And a summer's evening now, for instance, last night was a lovely evening, absolutely beautiful. So you go out with a bucket and a secateurs and you just wander around, there's a snip, but every time you deadhead, you're creating the possibility of having a new shoot coming, so it's important to do it.
Now we come to the Pansy and Violas section. Unfortunately, we only had 3 entries in our virtual show, but I know in our usual show we have usually a very big class. We have 4 sections in our show. We have 2 for the pansies and 2 for violas. One class representing 6 of one kind and 6 mixed, and this goes in the viola as well. And you will notice that it's much harder to get all your pansies or violas matching, so quite often if you can do that, it's a winner with the judge.
Here we have a container with liches in it. 2 pot plants, petunias, we have geraniums. There's a variety of plants in a window box, geraniums as well, more pink geraniums, hydrangeas in a pot. They grow well in a pot, but you must transplant them after a while. Geranium in a pot plant. More geraniums, pink ones. A window box with verbena. Or hydrangea. Lovely bashy pink, very proficient there.
Lovely.
Trading petunias in a hanging basket. Another hanging basket. Lovely white hydrangea. Climbing geranium.
Now we have some beautiful pot plants. We had a lovely dark linoleum, a mother-in-law's tongue, and there's a lovely purple streptocarpus. which I think would have got a prize on the show bench. The blue one is even more prolific, so yes, it might have won out of that section. Lovely sweet pea, which has been hard to grow this year. Your container. Oh, a lovely little succulent, and it's flowering, which is very, very nice. Another very nice succulent. Yes, a very unusual begonia maculata. Lovely white flower on it in spots. A lovely, lovely red streptocarpus. The smaller blue one mightn't have been as a good a plant for the show bench. A nice clean cactus. Oh, an amazing orchid. That definitely was a showstopper. Lovely, lovely sweet pea. Another orchid, most unusual colour. Oh, and another amazing orchid. Very hard to grow. An ammonium, a nice black one. Quite often get them just in green. Oh, and most unusual spotted orchid. Oh, the orchids are beautiful this year. Oh, a very nice collection of succulents. And they can be grown outdoors as long as it's a little bit sheltered, as you can see. Lovely little containers. The use of a broken pot, very effective. A very nice ammonium with the green centre. They need to be brought in the winter because the frost will absolutely kill them. A nice little coleus, bit leggy but nice. Oh, winner, absolute winner in the sweet pea here, beautiful. The foliage of an orchid. And a very nice oxalis, and it's an amazingly good plant, definitely a winner. Oh, a very nice variegated geranium that would have looked well on the bench in our geranium class. A very nice hosta for growing outdoors in a container. You are on the container.
Okay, what's a succulent?
A succulent it doesn't have spikes. And it usually requires a little bit more watering and feeding than the cacti. A cactus you will leave, you can leave for quite a long stretch without doing anything with it. And if you treat it correctly, which it's very hard in this country to get the light or the temperature and the light correct, so we don't often get our cacti flowering. When you do, it's a wonderful achievement. The succulents usually don't have flowering, but they will have a very nice type of glossy foliage. That's just a generalisation. I know the experts will go into it in much greater detail, and that's my explanation anyway.
Where are the native?
They can be from anywhere really. I mean, we have our own succulents. Some of them would be on the burren, but there'd be arguments over whether they are classed as a succulent.
Not from the Wild West.
Yeah, absolutely. But you would get them from the South American countries. You get them Mexico, Africa, and quite often the cacti particularly will do very well in a really arid climate, and you get a lot in North America in the desert areas, whereas the succulents couldn't live with that great heat. They like a little bit of moisture, and so they might be found in areas maybe near where there's foliage of trees or other things.
That just suited the Irish Wild West.
The Irish Wild West, yes, you get not only extraordinary plants, but extraordinary people.
do they need a special soil?
You're better having a gritty soil and a bit of sand in it, because they're not really greedy. They've had to struggle to survive. So yes, they're very interesting, and I have to say a lot of entries we've had over the years in the cacti have been with men. Men seem to really like growing them. So maybe somebody will have an answer for me. I wouldn't say men are prickly. I have to be PC here.
Need a bit of watering.
Oh gosh, I spray. So I expect both you, Bruce, no excuse, and Robin to have fantastic succulents and cacti next year. What do you think?
Well, I can be prickly if necessary.
Oh, well, what do you think, Robin? Do you think you will venture away from the vegetables?
I don't know.
It's less work, you know, you just have to grow them on a windowsill.
Now we have some raspberries, or sorry, they're loganberries. And then we have raspberries. You have to have the stem on your raspberry and your loganberry. There we have black currants, and the same applies to black currants. You must have your stem on it. Strawberries, which likewise. Gooseberries are, you have to have the same size gooseberries, and you have to have 12, but we have more than 12 there. Beetroot, that variety is bold-hardy. You have broad beans, certain varieties there. We have courgette and lettuce, that is red lettuce. There we have potatoes, early potatoes, globe artichokes, and potatoes, Colleen potatoes.
Robin, on your the fruit and vegetables, do you have to put the leaves underneath the fruit?
For exhibition, yes.
For
you
exhibition.
Have to. For exhibition, you have to.
It makes them look better.
It displays them better, yes.
And would it also stop them maybe rolling so
Well,
much
yes,
on the plate?
they stay symmetrical.
Do you feed your gooseberries?
No, you're not supposed to feed gooseberries.
I bet you feed your potatoes.
I feed my, well, I use my own compost with a bit of farmyard manure when I'm planting them. It takes 90 days for early potatoes from planting to maturity. 90 days for first earlies, 95 for second earlies, and 110 for main crop.
Now the ones that you showed us, what were they?
They're Colleen variety, an Irish variety.
Why do you grow them?
They're very flowery and very good cropping.
And not good for roasting, just for eating
Well, no,
nice piece of butter.
First earlies you would eat just boiled,
Yeah, with salt. And
yeah, or
Lovely.
boiled or steamed.
Now we come to the herbaceous and shrub section of our show. We usually have a very large entry in this, and thank you everybody for sending in the wonderful photographs that they have. The first was on our listing, you can see it's a beautiful red crocosmia called Lucifer. A lovely blue salvia was also there, and it's a tall, very nice tall plant. We have a lovely lace cap hydrangea. A beautiful example of the bottle brush shrub. Lismachia, which is a lovely herbaceous plant to grow for showing and for just in your garden. Beautiful white shrub there flowing down onto the borders. Some wonderful examples have been sent in. Thank you everybody. We hope that you bring all these beautiful plants to us next year to look on the show and compete on the show bench. Remember, it is fun also. And you can learn a lot by talking to the various people you'll meet at the show. Some are experts and some aren't. Lovely day, yellow day lily there. And it only lasts the day, unfortunately, but it's beautiful while it's out. And a beautiful blue geranium. nice alliums. Nice blue iris. Good year for irises. Beautiful pensnum, and I think they might be Castelliensis, beautiful, and a lovely blue salvia with the mushroom in front. And one of our most spectacular entries, masses of monster peony. A nice little purple centuria. Most of us have the blue one. Big fuchsia shrub. Some very exotic looking plants have come in. And there, monster beautiful peony rose, absolutely beautiful. White lichens, a very good plant for the garden, and it looks nice in the show bench as well. The Maltese cross, a lovely plant for the garden and the show bench. The arm lily. Some little pinks or sweet, look, maybe a sort of type of Sweet William.
Explain herbaceous.
Well, it's a very disputed, I suppose, question. I would personally feel that it's when the plant that dies down and comes back up from year to year.
An annual?
No,
Perennial.
it comes up every year. An annual doesn't. You have to usually start from a seed with the annual, so more labour intensive.
Not a hardy annual then?
Well, the hardy annual is again grown. You start it off indoors and brought out when it's a bit warmer.
Do you feed your herbaceous plants?
Well, I would give them a good manuring in the spring, and then during the year I would give it a foliar feed.
Every herbaceous plant, or do you have to?
I would feed all mine because I just love growing plants, so I'm a bit obsessive, so not everybody would be as diligent.
And what do you feed them with?
I use a lot of the seaweed fertiliser, the liquid, and in the spring I try and get a farmyard manure or some sort of granular feed if I can't get the farmyard.
So you use the liquid into the soil, or is it fully?
Both. I through the year. It's a job actually I give to my husband because it's quite tedious, and I give it to him as a therapeutic exercise.
And is that the use of the seaweed because it's organic?
Yes, and it's actually proven that it seems to be as good as any of the granular feeds. It is a little more expensive, but it seems to be very good. I've had a lot of success with it. In the last 2 years I've been using it, so I think I'll keep using it.
Would it work on roses?
Well, we can always try, but if it didn't work out, I don't want to have to see you next year on the show bench with little small roses.
I just wondered with the one you put round the bowl of the rose rather than using it as a foliar feed.
Well, yes, it probably would, but I think, it's what you're using and what you've used has worked so well. I would stay with what you know.
Do you divide herbaceous plants?
Yes, and it's a great time of year in the autumn to divide up, and your neighbours will love you absolutely forever. And you can divide them in as many sections. If the shrub gets too big, you're better breaking it up into several pieces and starting afresh.
And you divide them always in the spring?
No, in the autumn. Now you can divide them in the spring, but I've sort of find because of the winters being mild, it gives it for the last few years, it gives them a chance to sort of settle in.